Hi, good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of the Northern Hockey Shack podcast. I'm your host, Brevin Gervais. As always, we have Marky Allen, our producer. We have our co-hosts, Aiden Weiss and Ryder Langthorne. We have some very big news for you as we are launching a new website coming soon, powered by Original Joe's, so stay tuned for that. And the Shack is also looking for people that would like ads in the podcast or on social media or posts. Thank you very much. And now we'll get on with the podcast. Ian Lease, we'll start with you. How's your time down there in Fort Mac?
Well, it's been hot and sunny, and I understand that you guys can't say the same for your summer so far. It's been over 20 degrees and just beautiful days.
Yeah, we live in a shithole.
Yeah, but anyways, see my hoodie right here, Clear Motion. We're happy to say that they will be helping us with our clothing brand, which will be linked to our website when that is all released. But yeah, as far as what I've been doing lately, it's been nothing special. But I want to hear about what you guys did for Canada Day and how your past week has been. Someone take over.
Feel like Canada Day to me.
Canada Day, I guess. I'll go ahead there. We saw Canada Day, pissing rain. Didn't even feel like Canada Day. Like July 1st, more like September 1st, in my opinion. But
no doubt,
not a big deal. We went golfing with Marky Allen, Jesse Pomeroy, fan of the show, and Joel Patsy. Yeah. Former teammate. We had a good time. Couldn't feel our hands by the end of it, but it was a fun time. Tough scoring conditions, no birdies that day, but we'll move on and try to conquer another day.
Yeah, it was just a fuck around, basically, is what we could say.
Marky, we'll go with you.
Yeah, my same thing as what Ryder had to say. Just went golfing on July 1st, Canada Day, and ever since there, just been hanging out. Not a whole lot going on right now.
Well, my Canada Day, despite the weather, was very eventful.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear it, Brev. Someone was looking.
Yeah, someone's happy.
Someone was having fun that night.
Yeah.
So then we ended up going out, me and my girlfriend, and then we ended up going out more, and then I think we stumbled in at about 3:30, 4. And yeah, it was just quite a fun night.
At what point in the night do you not remember? Like 7 p.m.?
Oh, no, I remember all of it, but I was...
So, Brev, Canada Day just about turned into July 4th for you, hey?
Yeah, if I didn't have to work tomorrow, it would have just been a whole week-long celebration.
Celebrating North America.
The craziest thing about it is July 4th is America just doesn't give a shit about COVID. They are just like,
they're blowing.
They are just partying their dicks off down there. No, good for them. Good
for them.
Yeah, keep the borders closed, and you guys go crazy down there. That country is a goddamn mess right now. I want to go to Vegas eventually in like a year, but I ain't going nowhere near that country right now, man. They're having COVID parties, so you get that shit first. It's nuts.
When the Shack turned 21.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be ripping up Vegas, TPC Vegas. Hopefully playing cards.
I think about it. I only turned 21 in like 7 months.
Oh yeah, then I'm 8 months. I'm right behind you, bud. Aiden's 3 years.
That gives me Aiden
has the biggest beard, but he's the youngest one.
Aiden's actually still 12, but yeah.
You guys want to hear something sick about? I want to do a little golf talk right now, quickly.
Of course, always down for
I got
some
nothing.
golf talk.
Okay, yeah. So tee time's supposed to be at 6 o'clock. I'm just ripping iron at the gym. I get a text, hey, tee time's 5 o'clock. So I'm like, oh fuck. So I rip home, get changed, get in the golf gear, fly down. We start in hole 4. I'm with Cody Bailey. We're playing as a 5-some. Not supposed to, but who gives a fuck?
Fuck it. You guys
Riley Kidd, Original Joe sponsor. He's there. So we start off bogey the first hole, tough low bogey, almost doubled, saved the bogey actually. So we'll move on. Next hole 5.
Tweaked out a bogey.
5, I hit the bunker, bogey again. So I'm 2 over through the first 2. I'm like, fuck it, I have to get going here. Okay, hole 6, drop a wedge. I get a gimme birdie. So back to 1 over. We're buzzing. Hole 7, hit it about 10 feet, another birdie. We're even par. We're buzzing. Hole 8, lip a birdie. So another par. No, never mad at par. Hole 9, drain another 10-footer birdie. I'm 1 under. Hole 10, Another birdie. 2 under. Hole 11, nice little par. Hole 12, chip in for par. Then guess what hits me?
I'm waiting for the triple bogey.
No, it hits me. The stupid fucking lightning storm of the century. Hurricane Brev came in and fucking took me right off the course
Hurricane
and couldn't
Brev
golf
swept
again.
in.
I was 2
There
under
was
par.
no survivors.
And just because of our shitty weather, it ruins the best round of my life. Are you kidding me? Where do we live? Like, I'm going to move to Fort Mac. Apparently Fort Mac's better than PG right now. Like, our weather. Oh, man. Like, we got to 22
Our
one day.
weather's been a fucking joke.
Well, I'm going to Vernon in 3 weeks for a little wedding and a little golf at Predator Ridge. So, getting out of here
Golf.
for a few days. Fuck.
Little golf.
Golf.
Fucking right.
How was your time in Tobiano? Good round?
No, fuck no. To be honest with you, like it was actually not fun at all. Went with Brady and this other kid, we're playing the tips and it's just the hardest golf of my life. I got 9 the first hole. Like
Really? Wow.
oh yeah, dude.
I saw up at the Snowman.
I'm standing on the first tee, like everyone's watching. We're playing from the tips. They think we're a big deal. I just snap hook one right into the fucking
First tee's right in front of the clubhouse.
Right in front of the clubhouse. The marshal's standing there. Oh yeah, well, like, what's that bunker? 270 carry? Okay, I'll aim there. Down. It's like, oh yeah, like sick. And then made my friend. Dude, it took me 9 holes to get a par there. Like, wow. I bogeyed and doubled every single hole. I played a 5 over back nine though, so we'll.
Yeah, that's a PGA level course.
Oh, dude, it's like Louis Oosthuizen goes there a week before the U.S. Open and practices. So yeah, it's not easy. So next time I go there, I'll probably play from the ladies.
So what you're saying is that you're a pretty good deal.
What I'm saying is I'm about 15 years away from making the PGA Tour.
Not bad.
I'll be 35 when I crack the tour.
With the amount you've been golfing lately, I'm waiting.
Carrying your bag.
Pardon? How many what?
With the amount you've been golfing lately, I'm expecting you to come on this pod and start boasting about your second hole-in-one this year.
Oh, I've been close. I've been close. I hit the flagstick and put it 25 inches the other day.
Oh.
If there's another hole-in-one, the first Shack night out will be on my card. You heard that here first. We heard it here first, boys.
You know that really short hole? It's like 93 yards. Jarvis pulls out his pitching wedge, skulls it, puts it over the net, just puts it right onto the road on the other side.
At Pine Valley?
Yeah.
That fucking hole is dangerous, man.
There's some holes at PG, like hole 13 at PG, man. If you're righty and you have a nasty slice, you might be hitting Westwood. Like,
yeah.
Like guy of the show, Dan Gibb, he was golfing PG hole 12. Just put one right onto Westwood and just nailed this guy's car window. Cracked it. A week later, he wins the Men's Day cash draw. like, can you Jesus Christ is real, boys? Like that's what I got from that story. It's pretty awesome.
Holy fuck, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Brev, should we bring up our guest?
Sure.
This guy, he's a small time guy. You guys probably won't know him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a Fort St. James legend.
Our special guest today grew up in the sticks of Fort St. James. He played for the Portland Winterhawks in the WHL. He was drafted by the Oilers. He played for the Blackhawks. He has had a lengthy coaching career, and we're excited to see what he has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jim Playfair. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, legend of Fort St. James, assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, the man himself, Jim Playfair. Aiden, you're first. Cheer, bud.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show today. I don't want to talk about the NHL. I don't want to talk about Edmonton quite yet. Our producer, Marcus Allen, is from Fort St. James. So I want to know a little bit about your career growing up in that town and how you got introduced to hockey.
Sure. Well, I'm one of 7 kids, and from a big family and lots of relatives near live in Fort St. James, and they all had big families. So we started off playing hockey in the street like all the kids did and do, and carried over into the rink. And we were fortunate in Fort St. James that there wasn't a huge demand for ice with our minor hockey group being relatively small. So we got on the ice lots, and obviously the lake froze, so we could go skate on the lake as well. And just continued to play minor hockey. And I have an older brother, Larry, obviously, you guys I'm sure are aware, and he left to go away and play hockey when he was 15 years old, and he's 6 years older than I am. So he went on to play and eventually moved on to the Portland Winterhawks. And when I was 15, I was put on their list, and I moved off to Fort Saskatchewan and played there for a couple of years. Then I carried on into Portland and played with the Winterhawks to start my my junior career, and then it went from there. So, but growing up in Fort St. James was awesome. We have a cottage back in the lake back there. We go back every summer, and we love it there. We raise our boys there, so it's been home for us, and always will be.
So when you were growing up in Fort St. James there, I mean, obviously it takes a lot of self-dedication to get to the place where you got, but did you have a group of guys, a group of fellas with you that kind of stuck together and worked out together and stuff like that?
Yeah, it wasn't quite like that, back in the day. What I did was I would, I didn't take training serious until I probably came back from my first year in Portland. And then what I would do is there was no gym in Fort St. James, and there was no ice. So I would go up to the local RCMP had a kind of a private gym that they had set up. And so I would go up and work out with the members of the RCMP, which a lot of them were former players actually from around the country. So that worked out well. And it was a lot of dryland training for me when I was young at home. Like I said, there was no ice. And then as I got a little bit older, I would go down and work in the Spruce Kings hockey school. So I would go down during the week, and I would skate there and work out there with Don Nakbar and Jim Dodds and a bunch of guys from PG. And we had a workout group was more established in Prince George than it ever was in Fort St. James.
That's cool. Obviously, the majority of us stem from Prince George. So obviously having your brother play for Portland, is that that made the decision for you to go play there?
Yeah, it was. They were able to list me, I think, as a 14-year-old. And so the Fort Saskatchewan at the time was their Alberta junior, development team. And so, yeah, that was the connection. They actually ran a hockey school up in Kitimat. And I attended the school up there, and that's where they saw me and listed me, and it took off from there. But, having a brother that played there was obviously, the connection was important, and it worked out well.
So you talked about your first move from Fort St. James to Fort Saskatchewan. How did that come about in your hockey career?
Well, again, I went to after the training camp in Kitimat. They just identified that they thought I would develop quicker by moving on to playing the Alberta Junior League as opposed to playing midget hockey. And again, there wasn't much hockey. I was fortunate in the sense that I'd always kind of played up a couple levels. And I was playing Pee Wee. I'd go with the midgets or the bantams to different tournaments and stuff. So I was always able to, play up a little bit higher. And this was just one more step to go higher. So it was weird, starting, you go to the school, I was grade 10, and I went to a big school in Fort Saskatchewan from the school I came from, and meeting, a whole new group of players, and living with my first billet family, and just that whole move was a great learning experience. It was hard. It wasn't easy at times, but eventually it became a really rewarding experience, and I was able to go back to the fort in the summertime and continue to visit with my family and friends and carry on. So the first year was definitely the hardest for all the newness of it, but after that it gradually became quite a bit easier. So
during your time with Portland, you averaged about a penalty and a half per game, roughly. and so who were some guys that you played with that are, I guess, some notable names? I mean, obviously you were a highly touted prospect. You went 20th overall in the 82 draft. And so I'm just kind of curious about who was in your draft and who you played with.
Well, the year in Portland, we won the Memorial Cup, and we had Ray Ferrero, Cam Neely, John Kordick, Mike Vernon. We had a real good team. LP Turcotte was on the team. So, we had a real good group of players, good group of guys. Still friends to this day, which obviously I think is a byproduct of when you win the championship. So just a real good group of guys. So that would be probably the core of that group. I think if you look at it, there was a lot of players that went on and had success, whether it was in the American Hockey League or over in Europe, and a lot of guys obviously went on to play in the National Hockey League for a while. So it was a good group of guys. We'd gone to Hull in the Memorial Cup the year before and lost, and the next year was the first year that the Portland Winterhawks, the Western League, well, all the leagues, I guess, decided that the host team would be financially more beneficial to the league. And so we were the first team. They tried the experiment of having us host the tournament, which was a great success. And obviously it's still done to this day. So it was again, we were the first ones to do it, and we ended up winning the cup. So it turned out real well.
That's a cool piece of hockey history. I didn't actually know that. Moving on from that, another thing that I didn't know until I searched up your hockey DB was that Nova Scotia used to have an AHL team.
Yeah, that was Edmonton's farm team, actually. They had one for – Montreal Canadiens had their American League team there for a long time. They did lots and lots of winning. And then they moved on to, I think, Sherbrooke or Fredericton. I can't remember where they went to. And then the Oilers went in there, and I spent a couple of years in Halifax, which is kind of neat because years later, my son Jackson went to Dalhousie University there to get his degree after he was down on the WHL. So it was cool to go back there years later and visit Jackson after spending the time that I did young player as a young 20, 21, 22-year-old player. So it was a great city. Obviously, it's a neat part of Canada, and it was a good experience to be there as a young man.
So we've had Terry Ryan on this podcast, and he moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. What was it like for you to move from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Well, again, it was my first year turning pro, and so the whole deal of being a pro, getting ready to play, you come out of training camp in Edmonton, and you just think you're going to be there for a short period of time and get recalled. Obviously, that's your approach. So, but we went down there, and again, we had a really good group of guys. We had some good players, and the city was awesome, and we had a lot of fun down there. And I think that was the thing about going out to the East Coast was, obviously it's bitterly cold in Prince George and Fort St. James in the wintertime, but out there it's a different kind of cold coming off the Atlantic Ocean, and it's a bitter cold, but it's part of growing up, part of exploring Canada. We were very fortunate. I mean, we went from coast to coast, play the game we loved, and we really enjoyed our time out in Halifax for sure.
So in 83-84, you had 2 games with the Oilers. Guys on the team, Wayne Gretzky, Paul Coffey, Yari Curry. What was it like stepping on the ice with those guys in your first pro experience there?
Yeah, that was awesome. I remember one time I broke the puck out and I passed it to Yari Curry, and I jumped up on the play, and he gave it to Wayne, and we were going in on a 2-on-1 kind of. I was chasing up the ice to make it a 3-on-1, and I was banging my stick and squawking and yelling for the puck, and of course it goes back to Curry and he scores a goal. And I said to Gretzky, I said, nice play, but I was open. He goes, I know.
That's pretty awesome.
And I didn't play obviously as long as I wanted to play in the National League, and then I scored. The goal I did score was we beat New Jersey 13-2 or 13-4, and it was a game that Wayne Gretzky actually got in a bit of hot water. He called New Jersey a Mickey Mouse organization at the time, and it didn't fit well with the league. But I scored the 11th goal, which was a slap shot from the blue line, and I scored on Ronnie Lowe, who years later was my assistant coach down in the American League. And so, of course, they pick up the puck and they bring it back to the bench. And as Gretzky give me the puck, he said, "Thanks for taking the heat off, scoring the 11th goal." So a couple good memories, a couple good funny stories about my time there. But when you got on the ice with those players, you were automatically a much better player. Just the talent level, the skill set, the way they approached the game. They had a lot of fun. They worked real hard, and I think that rubbed off and allowed me to recognize that a big part of the game, you're supposed to have fun, and those guys, they certainly did.
We're moving along pretty quickly here, but I was wondering how it ended up working for you to end up playing in the IHL. I'm not too sure how contracts worked at that time and how rights worked, but I'm curious about that.
In the IHL, I'm sorry, is that what you asked me? The international.
Yeah, when you moved to play with the Saginaw Hawks there.
Yeah, what happened there was at the time Chicago and Edmonton shared the American League team over in Halifax. They each split, and then there was a divide in the two leagues, the International Hockey League and the American Hockey League, and some of the NHL teams had affiliates in the IHL and some of the teams had affiliates in the NHL. So Chicago ended up creating their affiliation in Saginaw in the IHL. And at the end of my 3 years with Edmonton, I became a free agent. And I had offers from Toronto, Vancouver, Chicago, and the Oilers. And so I ended up deciding on choosing Chicago. And when I went there, I ended up getting sent down. And again, their team was in the IHL. And then years later, the American Hockey League, which is a stronger league, they picked out, I think, 6 teams out of the IHL as it was going under, and they brought 6 teams in to help support the American Hockey League. So that's how the IHL faded away, and the American League got stronger. They just brought 6 teams over. So again, it was a time, and at the time, a lot of people viewed both leagues as being equal, other than the fact the IHL had some older players finishing up their careers playing in the IHL, and most of the American League teams had younger development kids going through their programs. So that was how those 2 leagues became one.
And so being a young guy going through free agency, I mean, being a BC boy, I was surprised to hear that you didn't pick Vancouver. I mean, obviously, big Vancouver fan myself. But when you're going through a time like that as just a young man, like what are you thinking about for your options? Like, what deterred you to choose Chicago?
Yeah, you know what it is? I went down to Buffalo and I went golfing with my brother Larry for a couple of days. We kind of spent some time. So a lot of negotiation, a lot of the discussion was held when I was back down in Buffalo with my agent, and it was a little bit different time. I mean, the one thing that I did was I evaluated the defense prospects on all the organizations that I was talking to, and I really felt that Chicago had perhaps some older defensemen that might be moving on in the near future, and I felt that would have been, you know, I moved into an Oilers organization that was just on the brim of winning Stanley Cups, and they were set to go. So, you know, it was a tough group to crack. Obviously, if I would have been good enough, I would have been there, and I wasn't. So I went to Chicago, and I felt that would be a good opportunity in there. And then the kind of the management, the coaching staff that brought me in was let go, and Mike Keenan came in just after that. So, but it's a decision I made, and I look back, and yeah, it probably would have been really cool to play for the Canucks, but it was more about finding the fit that was going to work, what I thought was going to work for me best. And so, it turned out the way it did.
Just kind of a side question here. Have you been on the Spit and Chicklets podcast before?
I haven't, but I coach Bissonette, so I kind of got a good grip on with all the time.
Fair enough.
They did a good job, those guys. You got to give him credit. Like Biz, you know, he's out of hockey, and he found his niche. He went back and played in the American League, and he worked his way back up, and he's always been a, you know, upbeat, fun-loving guy. We had lots of fun with him in Arizona the time we were together there, and real popular, real funny guy, popular with his teammates, and to see them bring that along it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's an awesome show they have going right now. Probably #1 hockey podcast out there. What was coaching Bissonette like? Was he he always talks about his career? Was he a good guy in the locker room then, glue guy?
He was a night. No, I'm just kidding. He was. This is a great guy. Lots of energy, lots of juice. Really popular with his teammates. They all recognize that he had a really difficult role that he had to fulfill, and he talks about it obviously on his podcast. And I think when you recognize that players that get put into that position, that role, that they need a lot of attention and recognition from the coaching staff and from the training staff and from the players themselves. And I thought that our group, obviously led by Shane Doan, did a really good job of keeping Biz in the loop. And I thought he did a really good job of keeping our group light, lots of fun, lots of energy, and he was an excellent teammate.
So now that we're getting into coaching, when you were starting to close out your career as a professional hockey player, your final season was played in the IHL, and did you kind of see yourself going towards coaching at the time, or were you kind of just trying to do anything to stick with hockey?
Yeah, a couple of things happened there. I had an issue with my back, and I was kind of nagging for the last 2.5 years of my career, and then I had a situation where I had a detached retina in my eye, and they did surgery. And when I was coming out of that recovery, Mike Keenan asked me if I would be interested in stepping behind the bench and help on the young defenseman down there, because at the time they only had one head coach. They only had one coach rather, and he was just the head coach. So I did that, and then shortly after that, I got fired. The head coach got fired, and I got fired. So I spent the next summer. Dylan, our oldest, was a year old. We went back to Fort St. James. So I spent the next summer trying to hunt down a coaching job and or a playing job. So I was really on the fence, and I was pushing equally as hard to extend my playing career as I was to get into the coaching side of it. And then I had an interview with Dayton, Ohio, in the East Coast Hockey League, and flew back for a buddy's wedding. Warren Reichel was a buddy of mine. I went back for his wedding and carried on into Dayton and interviewed and got the job, and we went out there, and I was there for 3 years. It was an affiliation with the Dallas Stars. So after Ken Hitchcock went up to Dallas from Kalamazoo, Michigan, then I moved into Kalamazoo, Michigan as an assistant coach, then the head coach. And then Craig Button, who was his first year as a general manager for the Calgary Flames. He was actually a director of scouting with Dallas prior to that. So essentially what happened was he brought me over to the Calgary Flames organization, and I went to coach in St. John, New Brunswick. So that's kind of how it started, and that's kind of how I got into the rhythm of coaching.
So when you got your first coaching job with Dayton, were you expecting to get a head coaching role, or were you kind of expecting more of an assistant role, just because you've never been in that position really before, aside from obviously your first half season there?
Yeah, you know what? I interviewed as a head coach, and at the time there wasn't. It was just really I was the head coach, assistant general manager, and I was responsible for recruiting all the players and setting up camp and travel and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that was the role I was looking for. I wanted to try and step into the position of a head coach and see where that would go. And it was a good decision. It was a good move. Lots of work, but it was very rewarding as well. We set a record, I think, 3 years in a row. We had over 100 players leave the East Coast League and go on to play in the American Hockey or the International Hockey League. And that was what our focus was how do we get these young players that have come through junior hockey, come through U.S. colleges or Canadian colleges, and give them a chance to move on to have a really good career at the next level. And that was the owner's focus. That was my focus. And we did a good job of that.
So you had a successful 3 years coaching, making the playoffs each year, 1 year under 500, but 2 years above. So that's good. How did Michigan come into play? Were they hiring, or did your contract end in Dayton? You know what? They were affiliated with Dallas Stars. Okay. Had the team in Kalamazoo, and they worked with the team in Dayton. Okay. So Hitchcock went to Dallas. Claude Noel took over in Kalamazoo, and then I went up as the assistant coach. So I had it was a big deal leaving the East Coast League and hooking up with a National League team, getting a contract and getting a little bit of stability for myself and my family in the coaching game. So I signed a 3-year deal with them. And then I think 2.5 years in, they let Claude go. And I took over as the head coach for the rest of that year. And then that's when I moved on the following year to St. John.
And in St. John, you picked up your second ring in the 2001 season. That must have been just absolutely crazy to win one as a player and then once again as a coach. How did that season go?
Yeah, it was neat because we had a really solid group of players. We had a lot of players that were finishing up. Most guys get 3 years, entry-level contracts. A lot of guys were finishing up their second year of their deal, finishing up their second years, going into their third years. And a lot of guys were in their third years leaving, their entry-level deals. So the ability to win was going to be a financial windfall and an opportunity for a lot of players to move on. And I think after that next year, we had 17 players that went up and spent some time in the National Hockey League. Obviously, they didn't all stay there, but they went up and played some games, and then some guys got some real nice contracts around the American League. And so the rewarding part of it was the go-forward part where the players did a really good job, worked hard, worked well together, and were rewarded for it. And then individually, they all had an opportunity to get, an opportunity to move on and further their careers. So I think that any time you get a chance to win is obviously special, and that was the second one we had gotten, and it was a lot of fun as a head coach.
And so that kind of brings me to my next question. What it's like as a coach to having to deal with emotions on the bench and after games and stuff like that, dealing with the media. Obviously, they ask a lot of questions that you don't want to answer and stuff like that. And how does that for you?
Yeah, I still think the game's about emotion. I think sometimes we end up getting a little bit too sterile in the game. I know in the NHL during the TV timeouts, the two linesmen come over and stand between the two benches, and when our guys get chirping back and forth and players are skating by and they're chirping the other bench, and the linesmen are jumping in there and telling them to shut up and be quiet, and that's enough. And I'm always the first guy to yell at the linesman to get lost and go get some water and go visit the other referees by the penalty box and leave some emotion in the game. Let the players carry on that emotion, because it really drags the best out of people when they gotta lay it on the line. And if you're having somebody there forever, kind of putting a damper on the emotional part of the game, I think it takes away from the competitiveness. So I think your job as a head coach is changed somewhat in the delivery of your message, but I still think the message is it's really hard to win, and you got to separate yourself in a lot of different ways. But emotionally, if you're not prepared to be the better competitor emotionally, you don't have a chance to win. I mean, you can have an off night and still win a game. You can have good goaltending and good special teams, but the consistency in your group to win on a long-term basis is you need really, really good emotion from your group. And sometimes the coach has to direct that, and majority of the time with good teams, the players direct that and drive that. So I think when you're missing that part of the game, that part of the energy, it's, winning's not going to be consistent for your group or for your team. So I think that's, and then, you go after the game, you answer the media questions. Obviously, most times you address your group, but with the media, they got a job to do. They got families to feed, and when they ask you a question, if they don't get the answer they like, they'll re-ask the question, then their buddy will re-ask the question, and you just got to make sure you're sticking on your point, and you got to make sure that whatever the message is you're telling the media, hopefully you've already had a chance to address your players with it, so they don't get blindsided by reading something later. So it's an important part of the game, but I think there's the communication on how you feel, and whether it's a win or a loss, your emotions are still a really important part of it.
So moving into the 2011 season, you coached with Phoenix, which eventually turned into Arizona. And you had some very notable players on your team. You guys made it to the conference finals one year. That team had guys like Shane Doan, a young Oliver Ekman-Larsson, like we talked about already, Paul Bissonnette. What was it like for you getting that first step into the NHL as a coach and moving onwards from there?
Yeah, I think the group we had in Arizona was unique in the sense that we kind of hit our stride late in the season. Mike Smith was obviously really important for us. We had a good, solid group of defensemen: Derek Morris, Keith Yandel, Obviously, EL was coming along at the time, and we did a lot of that winning again on good emotion, determination, good goaltending, and grit. And I think that it had been a long time since the team in Arizona had any kind of success that was probably positive. And so we had a good run. Obviously, come up short against LA, but we had a lot of fun. We did some damage. I think a lot of teams didn't think we were going to get that far. And anytime you can rise above expectations, obviously that's really very rewarding, and we were able to do that.
I can't see Arizona having a strong fan base, and that's been obvious with attendance in the past couple seasons. But what are some things? I skipped over Calgary. We'll get back to that. But what are some things that you guys did as a coaching staff to kind of gel the guys together? Some exercises and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was more the thing that brought the guys together was the winning. I think that Dave Tippett's got a very nice disposition about himself, the way every player gets included into the group. And I think every player feels their role is important, which it is. And he addresses that, and he allows the group to grow together. He doesn't make a lot of rules. He doesn't get in their way. He really gives them the clear direction and the guidelines on how we want the game to be played. And then he allows them to execute it. So I think what happened was the group recognized that they had really good goaltending, that they had a collective bunch of guys that really got along very well, and they learned to expect to win. I think everybody wants to win, but it's a mental change when your group expects to win. When they go on the ice or they go into a period and they're down by a goal, they expect to get back, they expect to get the next goal, they expect to find a lead. And I think that's obviously it's a major part of being able to win is when you go and you change your expectations. And our group changed their expectations late in the season and obviously into the first round. And that was important to us. It was Nashville, Chicago, LA, good teams. And we found a way to win. We won on the road. We won at home. We won overtime games. We won late. We gave up leads. We got them back. And that expectation changed. It was a good feeling for the group.
Nice. So going back a little to your first year in the National League as a coach, most pros remember their first game as a player. Do you remember your first game as a coach?
Not really.
No.
I mean, I remember my first win. We beat Edmonton 2-1. But I think that it's funny. It's a cool way to ask the question because I think you go through the exhibition games and you start to get yourself established with how you want the team to play, and you're focused in on that, and then the puck drops on the opener, and you're just trying to get the win. So actually, I don't remember the nuts and bolts of it. In fact, it's funny about you guys asked me about the Memorial Cup game. My kids sent it to me about 2 weeks ago, and it's the first time I've ever watched us play the Memorial Cup game. It was on YouTube somewhere, and they found it, and so I watched that, and then we all kind of had some laughs about it. And then 2 years ago, we were all down in Arizona, and we found the Calder Cup game from 2000, and the kids and I all sat around and watched. I hadn't never sat down and watched that game. So 2 games we've won championships with, and it took me 20 years to watch them for the second time, or for the first time actually. So it's kind of cool.
But once you started watching it, did you start remembering every moment of that game? Like, oh, I was here for that, like stuff like that.
In Portland, I had 17 family members come down from Fort St. James to watch, and Bernie Pascal was the guy calling the game. He talked about that, and that brought back a lot of memories. Watching the game, watching how we scored the goals, that was neat to see. Obviously, in 2000, once I started watching, about 5 minutes into the game, I could recollect everything that was going to happen throughout the rest of the game. But still, just to sit back and watch it 20 years later, it was. I'm not sure everybody would do it that way, but that's the way I did it, and it was kind of cool.
So getting into your Calgary coaching career, I missed that earlier, but I mean, you got to coach, obviously, first ballot Hall of Famer, Jerome McGinley, some very famous names, and guys like Phaneuf and Kiprusoff and Giordano and Langkow, and the list goes on. But what was your time like in Calgary? And it's kind of funny that now you're on the opposite end in Edmonton.
In the battle.
Yeah. You know what? The Calgary deal was great. My first year, obviously, we won the championship in the American League. Then I stayed there for another year and a half. And I came up with Daryl Sutter. I was offered the head coach's position in Calgary earlier. And just the way it played out, they had Don Hay had been fired that year. Greg Gilbert had been fired. And Craig Button, who was a young first-year, it was his first time being a general manager. He'd gone through 2 first-year coaches already, and I just didn't feel that it was a situation set up where they wanted me to come in there and as the intern coach for the rest of the season. I just didn't think the situation was stable enough, so I turned down the offer. And then that Christmas, Daryl Sutter was hired. In fact, I mentioned to Ken King, the president at the time, he interviewed me, and I said, the guy you should get, Daryl had just been fired in San Jose. I said, you should go get Daryl Sutter. He's from out west. He's a cowboy. This team needs a kick in the ass. He'd be the guy to roll in here, and he'd be a heavy-handed push, and that would be the guy. If I was you, I'd hire him. So he flew down to San Jose, went up for supper with Daryl, and hired him the next day. And then Daryl phoned me and just asked me why I didn't take the job, and we discussed it. And then he asked me if I would come to coach with him because I'd won a championship in the IHL with the Indianapolis Ice, and I was the captain of the team, and Daryl was the head coach. So we'd had a history of working together. So as a player coach. So when I went up there, it was the 2003 season. We didn't make the playoffs, but then we had the 2004 run where we went to the finals, and then the next year was a lockout. So by the time I took over as the head coach the following year, we had some success there. Obviously, the 2004 run, and we'd had had a history with Daryl and stuff. So it was, then I went from there on to back down to Abbotsford. So I think I was with Calgary for 10 years, and it's a hell of a long time in today's game to be in the coaching racket and stay with one organization for 10 years. So I would think overall it was considered a success.
In that 0-4-1, there's that famous goal that was like not allowed, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you I just watched it the other day. Actually, crazy. I was like reading about it, and like you think it was in, hey? Because in my opinion, that puck crossed the line.
You know what's funny is ESPN had it in the booth upstairs that it was in, and they were running down to tell the officials that on their feed the goaltender's Habibulin's pad was tucked back in on the angle, and the puck was over the line. But they dropped the puck and it carried on, and once the puck's dropped, it's game on. So we seen it, our video guy, after the game, and it was just such a different time as far as the video. Now we have iPads on the bench. They call us to the bench. It's just such a different deal. So what happened was we went in and we seen the videotape the puck was in, and Daryl just walked in the dressing room and said, it was no goal. We got to go win Game 7. We didn't linger. We didn't talk about it. We didn't kick it around. We didn't beat ourselves up over it. We got a bite to eat, got on the plane the next morning, flew to Tampa Bay, and tried to get that Game 7 in Tampa Bay. So it was, it was what it was, and hindsight, it looked like it was in. We had some game left to play, but that's the hockey gods, right?
Yeah, that's the correct way to handle it, sounds like. And I was just going to talk about the iPads on the bench. When did that get implemented in your coaching career?
Yeah, the first time, back, we had them in Arizona a couple of years. Then I was out for 2 years out of Arizona, and obviously now I'm back with them. And you know what? And it's dealer's choice, right? Some guys like to look at it. Some guys don't like to look at it. With the defenseman, I never pull it out and show them unless they want to look at something, and I would prefer they look at it themselves. I think there's enough coaching done prior to the game, post-game, that I think there's suggestions they can look at. But if they feel something on the ice, they want to see something on the ice, I think it's for them personally. I met with the defenseman before the season started, and I said, I don't want to have you guys try to have me right or wrong between periods on a video that's like that. And they all agreed that's the way they like to do it. That's the way we do it here, and it works well for us.
So you've coached with some some good coaches. I mean, in Daryl Sutter and Mike Keenan. I was wondering about pre-game routines for coaches or odd superstitions. Is that happening in the coaching industry?
Yeah, Daryl was a practice day. He was practice day, game day morning. First thing he came in the morning, he was all business. He was game day. His game face was on. He was very specific in what he expected from the group on that game day, so he coached. Mike, I played for Mike, and I coached with Mike. So Mike was a much more intense coach. I remember one time in Chicago, we called 4 of us into to the video room before the game. It was Glenn Cochran, myself, Bob McGill, and the other guy was, I don't think it was Stu Grimms, but there's 4 of us. And then we were playing Boston. He said, okay, tell me who you're going to fight. So the guys were going on the line, and they were picking, Jay Miller and whoever the guys were on Boston. So the last guy that he wanted fought he had the name circle, was Cam Neely. So he goes, okay, Playfair, you got Cam Neely. So the game starts, and I play defense my whole life. So I go up, I'm on left wing. So I go up to Cam about 5 minutes in the game. I said, hey, Cam, order some headquarters. I gotta fight you tonight. He starts laughing. He goes, I'm not fighting you. I said, well, we gotta fight. I said, because Keenan's fucking idiot's going nuts on the bench. I gotta fight. He goes, I'm not gonna fight you. He goes out, he gets 2 goals. So then now I'm on the bench, and Keenan comes yelling down the bench, Playfair, get out there. So he wants me to go chase Cam down. So I go down and I find Cam, and I'm like, hey, I said, we got to fight. And he's like, we're not fighting, Jimmy. So I don't give a shit who says that. He says, my coach sent me out here, I wouldn't fight you, and you're not going to come fight me. He goes, but I got a guy for you to fight. I'm like, oh, yeah? He goes, yeah, go fight so-and-so. He goes, he pissed me off. So I went and fought somebody else that night. And coach. But, so that was the playing part of Mike Keenan. And then when I was coaching, it was his last go-around. He had been through the whole coaching gamut, and he didn't have as much probably juice and energy, and the game had changed, the players would change, and he had a lot of conflict with the players, and so I spent some time kind of ironing that relationship out. But it was just a different time for him. So just different coaches, different time. Dave Tippett, hands down the best coach in all that whole group of coaches that I worked with, in the sense that he's got a great deal of respect for the players. He has a great level of intensity. Doesn't always show it with the way he handles himself, but real pro, very classy, and gets the most out of his guys. So, hey, I worked with Ken Hitchcock when I was in Kalamazoo and those days as well. So, when you look back at it, I've had, some great experiences and some great relationships with good coaches, and that certainly helps along the way.
So obviously Oilers last few seasons had disappointing seasons, and then they bring in Tippett, you, and the new staff, new GM, and now you guys having a great season. What did he implement to this roster of young guys?
Yeah, I think the thing is, when Kenny Holland came in, obviously his pedigree of winning made everybody sit up and take notice. And then he hired Tip. I think that was the stable leadership that Kenny knows is obviously very important. Had a lot of meetings with the young players. We met with individual players and talked to them about their disappointments and where they saw the pitfalls of the group and where they felt we would have where areas were that we needed to improve. And I think, again, Ken and Dave just kind of set everybody down and explained to them what their roles would be, why their roles would be really, really important, and how we could learn to grow and win as a team. And again, it became that concept of competing hard in practice against each other, not giving an inch to each other. And I think that was something that, our young defensemen didn't really focus on a lot maybe prior, but now we have really good intense practices against each other. It leads into the games. Again, when you got 2 studs like, Connor and Leon, it raises the level of everybody's expectations from the moment you walk into the rink, and you learn to expect to win, and you learn to expect to compete hard and compete with consistency. And I think the deal with our group now is when we're running on all cylinders, as we're learning to move along with obviously some young players, we're trying to find that consistency. We're trying to put it in play, and when we get off the rails a little bit, we seem to be able to get back on because we have high end skill. And so, the play away from the puck is obviously it's that hard work thing, right? It's focus and it's discipline and it's awareness and good communication. But once the puck's turned over, that high end skill is what separates games. And so we obviously recognize what we have, and Nugent Hopkins is to me is a top underrated penalty killer and defensive center iceman that can add offense. You got Yamamoto come up as a young player this year. Ethan Bear is a young player. Darnell Nurse is coming along. I did not realize how good Oscar Klefbom was until I started working with him every day. And so I think that, Koskinen and Mike Smith, two great big body goaltenders that handle the puck very well. Takes a lot of the heat off of our defensemen and moves the puck out of our zone quickly. So I think we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet, obviously, but I think we're making strides in the right direction, and that's encouraging and exciting.
So, I mean, you kind of just answered this question, but how does the locker room change having debatably the best player in the world and MVP on your roster?
Yeah, it's neat because they're both really good people. And they're young guys, and I think everybody recognizes that they give you a chance to win every night. And probably the biggest thing that we feel we've accomplished this year was the ability to separate Leon and Connor. I think that Draisaitl and Nuge and Yamamoto established themselves as one of the top lines in the league when Connor was out. And then when Connor came back in, we had Cassian with him on the right, and then we kind of had Double A on the left. We moved some guys through on the left hand on Connor's left side, and it became a dangerous threat to have the 1-2 punch. And so I think the players recognize that those two players being separated it just creates so much more depth for us. And then when they get back together in the power play, they got such confidence and creativity in the power play that they work well together there. So it's a fun locker room to walk into on game day because the expectation is we're going to give ourselves a chance to win, and that's huge for moving forward.
Right. And so one thing that, I mean, it was widely talked about around the NHL for years was Edmonton's lack of defense, and obviously, that's a major factor going into playoff times and stuff like that. And what do you think the team needs to be able to make that to be able to be a potential championship team? What's the next step?
Well, I think going forward, you guys into this year, like in this situation we're talking about today, starting training camp on the 13th of July. Dave Tip and I were talking yesterday, and we'll never have this opportunity perhaps presented to us in our lifetime ever again, where we can win every home game, play in our home building, never get on an airplane, never deal with a time zone situation, and win a Stanley Cup. So it's, there was a lot of talk that the host team wouldn't be playing in their host city, in their own city, and obviously that's not going to be that way. So I think, the odds makers in Vegas are going to have a hell of a time trying to find a line on this one, because literally you got 24 teams coming in, and everybody, in my mind, has a legitimate chance to win the Stanley Cup this year. And obviously we all know that's not the case ever prior to this situation that we're dealing with now. So, but for us, particularly this situation, we've talked about needing some more experience in our back end. We've talked about needing to shore up our third line center ice and find a consistent left winger for Connor. But in a short sprint, like we're going into, good goaltending and special teams and having those two studs up front can, we'll see what happens, but it's certainly a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we recognize that.
So obviously I see online you guys are getting into small skates. What are the steps being taken before the players are getting onto the ice?
Well, there's the European players come back and they have a 3-part testing process they go through. The players coming in from Canada on a commercial plane, they have a 3-part test they have to go through. I was tested yesterday. The coaches that came into town yesterday were tested yesterday when we arrived, and then now we can go to the rink tomorrow morning and we're cleared to go. So it's really consistent across the NHL. They have an app on our phone, and we have to send in our take our temperature, send it in prior to getting to the rink. They test us at the rink. We're only allowed to go into the video room, the coaches' offices. We're not allowed to go in the dressing room or the weight room. And we can watch the players skate from a designated position up high in the stands. So we're still separated from the players, and it's, as you say, their group's starting to grow a little bit bigger. I think they're going to try to get the 2 groups of 12. Our players are all, if not in the city, they're on the way back into the city. They should be here by tomorrow. And you know what the league is doing? The league takes over, right? So it's not like it's, our dressing room per se. The league will come in and the legal mandate. We'll use the Oil Kings have the home locker room for the Oil Kings, the visitors locker room for the Oil Kings, our locker room, the visitors locker room from the NHL. So you got 4 essentially NHL locker rooms, plus they have a practice facility attached to the arena. So there'll be the ability to be separated and stay safe is going to be the priority that they're focusing on, and then get the games underway and let's get this thing going.
So do you think that the NHL is dealing with this situation in a good manner?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, you guys, that what they're doing something that's very unique. They're negotiating a 6-year extension of the CBA as well as trying to establish the ground rules for return to play. Either one of those negotiations would be long and difficult. And to be able to blend the 2 of them and still work with, 24 teams, getting them into 2 NHL cities, and the rules and regulations are going to be implemented, 100% they're doing the best possible job they can do to make it safe for everybody. And obviously there's a financial component to it, but there's also still winning the Stanley Cup and handing it out, and that's a lifetime achievement for people that the league recognizes, the players recognize. They don't want to miss one chance of that. They've missed a couple already, and they don't want to do it again. And so I think they're going to – well, I guess the cool thing too, is the players have to ratify it. They have to all agree that it is safe enough for them to come back and play, and the league has to prove that they've done their due diligence to allow it to be that way. And so I think the best minds are going to make the best decisions, and that's comforting.
So I'm guessing you watched the NHL draft lottery last week.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that? That was pretty interesting, if I would say so myself.
When we were in Arizona, the one that we probably watched the closest, the most, actually we had a viewing party together as a staff, was the Austin Matthews one that obviously went the way it went. Yeah. But, I think you can look at this now and it is what it is, but it turned out to be probably a brilliant situation where, you know what I mean? Like the league gets to double dip again on the publicity of the draft lottery. I think that the team that falls out, has a little bit of, kind of a little bit of sunshine maybe coming their way down the road. But again, nobody wants the first overall pick in lieu of the chance to win a Stanley Cup. I'll guarantee you that for sure. Yeah. So that's going to make it a competitive, obviously, play-in round. And we know we got Chicago. We know we have our work cut out for us. So we're looking to try and do some damage in the early part of the playoffs.
So I got 2 more questions for you. Try and make this one quick if you can. But this one is, how do you respond to these Lafreniere comparisons with McDavid or Sidney Crosby? Have you done much research on the kid?
I haven't, but he's got some ground to cover, obviously, right? When you got Sid coming in, doing what he's doing, winning the cups he's winning. You watched that little documentary on what Connor did to get back to play, and what Connor's been able to do in his career. It's remarkable, but I will tell you this. It's amazing to me how year after year, after every other year, whatever it is, there's another new amazing star hockey player coming along to keep the game in good shape. You know what I mean? You look back to over all the years, and every year there's been another amazing, talented player come along that can really drive the bus for the league, and hopefully he's the next player, and it's healthy for the league, and it's good, and I think that's what we need to keep that young energy coming, and again, in saying all that, Connor's got room to try to catch up to Sid with the cups, and Sid's he's set the standard, and he's the leader right now. So I think everyone's trying to work towards that level of play.
So my final question for you today is, I mean, basically we've been through your whole career, pretty much, and so I'm wondering what your favorite hockey moment that you've been a part of all time is, and you can't count this podcast.
Okay. Let me think about that. My favorite hockey moment. January 13th of this year, Jackson and Jessica had a baby boy, and our first grandchild. And I skated out on the ice for practice. And as I skated around for practice, I skated up beside Connor, and I put my arm around Connor. I said, "Hey, happy birthday, Connor." He's like, "Thanks a lot." And I said, "Also, my grandson was born on the same day your birthday as you guys share birthdays." So that was kind of a cool thing. So I think, all the winning that we've done and we've been a part of and all that type of stuff, I think when you can connect the dots with a grandchild and one of the best players in the game, it's pretty cool. So I'd say that's right up there for sure. And one of the coolest things that I've had happen to me in my career in the game.
So I got one final question for you here. You said you got Chicago in the first play-in round. Obviously, they have some guys who've won multiple cups. What are you telling your team and study when you're watching a guy like Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves? Obviously, very skilled, crafty players.
Yeah, I think if we get a chance to get on them early, we have to do a really good job as checking by committee. But if we can be, they're very difficult players to be physical on and to hit, tough to catch them. But I think if we can get into the game, into the hard part of the game early and often, it'll give us a better chance to do some damage. I think we got to be obviously aware of them off the rush. They're a very dangerous team off the rush, very skilled, find people late. They got really good awareness. They got a young, skilled group. But I think we have to come into the first part of the game and finish our forecheck, be a really aggressive, smart, disciplined team without taking penalties, obviously. But I think we can't tiptoe into the series. I think we have to rely on our goaltending to be solid, but I think we've got to come out hard and physical.
Is sticking Clefbaum on Kane something that you would do, that team would do?
Yeah, I think, you will go through the lineup and see how it's set up. But Adam Larson and Clefbaum are such a good shutdown pair. We're really comfortable with Darnell Nurse and Ethan Bear as well. So I think at home you can kind of get more defined shutdown, but maybe on the road you got to use a committee of 4 to get your matchups going. So, we'll see how that plays out, and obviously not on the road, but not being the home team at home here. But, so we're going to have to work around that a little bit. But and those players love that challenge, right? Like they love the ability to shut down top players, and we hope that they're going to be more concerned with how they're going to shut down Connor and Leon. If we do our part defensively, then hopefully the pressure is on them with our 2 stars, and see where that goes.
So I just recently moved to Northern Alberta. And so as I pass through on my way home to BC, you're going to have to text me some of the good bars and stuff to go to. Maybe I can pick up an autograph from some of the guys on the way home. But with that, we're going to send Brev into the hot minute here, and he's got a few quick questions for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll start off just 5 simple questions. You got minimum 3 seconds or maximum 3 seconds to answer them. Starting off, what's your favorite song?
My favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh, probably anything by John Prine.
Nice. Okay. Nice. What's your favorite food?
Anything my wife's cooking.
Oh, good answer. Good answer. That's what we like to hear.
Okay, and now what's your favorite hobby?
I would probably have to say working in my cottage in Fort St. James. Anything outside or on the lake, working at the cottage, I would classify that as my hobby.
Yeah,
you can tell he's from BC.
Nice area there. Okay, and then What's your favorite arena to play or coach in?
Oh man, Chicago Stadium is there, but yeah, I'd say Chicago.
That's yeah. And then this one might be a little bit subjective, but what's your favorite team in the NHL?
Favorite
As a fan.
How long till you know what? I think we all grew up Canuck fans, right? Obviously, grew up as a Canuck fan and had a lot of passion and desire for the Canucks, and watching what happened against Boston was heartbreaking. But obviously now
Watch out, Aiden might cry.
Yeah, no. So like, I'll tell you what's kind of neat is I was drafted as a young boy by the Edmonton Oilers, and now I've circled back and I'm now one of the coaches for the Edmonton Oilers. That to me is a pretty cool start and finish of the deal. So I would have to obviously go with Edmonton, the team that drafted me and the team that employs me right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
I got a question for all you guys.
Okay.
Oh boy.
How long do you guys sit around and debate about not asking me about breaking the sticks over the boards in Abbotsford?
About 15 minutes. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Hey, how come some
conversation.
who didn't have the balls to ask the question? Hands up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we got
I
into
guess-
emotion there a little bit, I was going to ask you about it. Like, do you mind talking about it quickly?
I'll tell you guys a story. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Quick
Let's
question
hear.
before
So,
we get into this. Did you ever coach Ryan House on the Abbotsford Heat?
No, he came just after me, I think.
Okay.
That was thought.
but yeah, we did debate it. Like, we were like, I don't know, should we ask him? But like, yeah. So against Hamilton, just take us through that whole scenario for the fans, please.
I thought you guys would come out of the blocks about 3 questions in at that one just because you guys wanted to hear the answer. That's cool. Okay, you guys got a few minutes here? It takes a second.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Time in the world.
So we were playing in Abbotsford, we're playing home against Hamilton, obviously, and my son Austin is a stick boy. Our youngest boy Austin is a stick boy, so he was over working on their side, and so the game's going on, and puck drops, puck is shot into our zone, and our goaltender freezes it, and as their tough guy comes in, and as he goes by the net, the goaltender freezes the puck. His knee strikes the goaltender's chin and knocks his mask off, and it spins over in the corner. So Jamie Koharski is the referee, and there's only one referee at the time. So he skates over. He's beside our bench as they're dropping the puck, and I'm like, no goalie interference on that? He knocked his fucking helmet in the corner. What do you mean? There's nothing there? No call? And he goes, just worry about coaching your fucking team. And so the players on the bench go, ooh, and that kind of starts us off on the wrong foot. So now we're going along, get out of the first period. We're into the second period. And Hamilton's goaltender goes side to side in the offense. We're in the offensive zone. He goes from post to post. He falls over, and he's hurt. We don't know it, but he ends up breaking his ankle. So they drag him off the ice, and they put the backup goaltender in. So we get to the second period. We get into the we get into the first period, into the start of the second period. Shoot the puck down the ice. Their goaltender comes out to about the bottom of the circle to freeze it. And as he freezes, he kind of spins and turns. And Alex Henry is their captain. He's their tough guy. He's playing Minnesota. And JD Watt is our tough guy, and he's chasing down the ice. So JD kind of jumps over the goaltender and slides and lands in the corner. So Alex Henry goes over and he's leaning on the boards, and they're having a conversation. So it's their tough guy, our tough guy. And I'm thinking, if there's going to be a fight, they're going to get in a fight. If not, whatever. So nothing happens. And so I'm looking down to see who Hamilton's going to put on the ice. And I see a linesman skate down to the far end for like an offensive zone face-off for a penalty. So I look at JD Watt, and he's getting kicked out of the game. He's going by the door, and I'm like, what'd you say? And he goes, nothing. I didn't say a fucking word. So I called the referee over, and he skates over the bench, and he says, that was intent to injure. I said, how about the guy that gets his – I said, how about when our goaltender got his mask knocked off in the fucking corner? He goes, that was nothing. He skates away. So I grabbed the stick, and I wanted to smack the boards and get his attention, and, of course, the stick fucking breaks. So I grab another one just because one wasn't – you can't fly on one wing, so I just grabbed another one and snapped it. And I got kicked out of the game. So the game's over. I go in the dressing room, and I thought my son would be in the dressing room, but he wasn't. He was – actually, they had him in their dressing room. So I was sitting in there during the game, and then when the game was over, I just addressed the group and I said, "Hey, you guys, sorry, I should never have done that. That was stupid, you know, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't lose my temper and all that kind of shit." So they're all laughing, no big deal. So the next day, we had a day off. And I phoned that night after the game. It was like a 4 o'clock start for us. And then Hockey Night Canada came on at like 6 or 7 or whatever. So on the way home, my wife sent me a text and said, "Sounds like you need a stiff whiskey and a tailor. Put some buttons back on your jacket." So I get home, and I actually looked at the videotape in the dressing room, and there was no videotape of what happened. So I get home, sit down, we're watching Hockey in Canada, and then all of a sudden I see this idiot behind the bench breaking sticks and ripping his jacket off and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? So our radio guy phones me, and he told me he was the guy that went down up in the press box. He grabbed the videotape from 2 TV stations out of Vancouver. He voiced over it, and he sent it out viral. And I'm like, wait a minute, you sent that tape out viral? Like, that's a no-no. Like, I'm going to get suspended for this. This is, like, not good, you know? So anyways, I phoned Dave Andrews, who was the president of the league at the time. And I said, "Hey, you're going to say videotape, you know, whatever. I'm guilty. I'll talk to you tomorrow." So the next day he phoned me and he said, "What happened?" So I said, "Just do me a favor. Watch the very first shift of the game, then watch the hit, and then let's have a conversation." So he did that. He watched the first hit. He watched the collision. And then he said to me, he goes, "The referee fucked up." He says, "But I can't tell everybody that." He said, "I'm not going to suspend you, but he says, I'm going to fine you $500, and I'm going to phone the team. The team's going to pay it because your radio guy put it on the air. So the team's going to pay that." And he says, but Reebok, the whole league was using Reebok sticks, and they charged them $150 a stick. He said, "But Reebok's going to charge you $300 for breaking both those sticks over the boards." So I'm like, I don't get. So that's what happened. He suspended the referee. The referee didn't ref against us the rest of the year. He fined the referee and suspended him, and didn't coach against us the rest of the year, ref against us at the end of the year. And then at the very end of the season, our last game of the season, Dave Andrews was at the game, and he sent me a text and wanted me to come to the hotel and have a drink with him at the bar. And I went to the hotel and sat with Dave Andrews for about 2 hours in the bar having drinks and visiting. And he said, "You know, I love that." He says, "There's not enough emotion left in the game." He says, I couldn't tell everybody how good it was for our game." He says, "But that was an exciting part of it, and that's a part of you can't lose that emotion in the game." And I agree with him, you can't. And so I remember TSN off the record wanted to do a story on me just after that. So I phoned Dave Andrews, the president. I said, "Look, you want the American League to get some press on TSN, or do you want to put this thing to bed?" He goes, "Let's put it to bed." He goes, "You know, I'm not going to fine you because it'll be on the internet for the rest of your life. You have to deal with that the rest of your life. So I don't want any more of your money. I don't want any of your money." So that's kind of how the story. That's how the story went, and that's kind of how the whole thing played out. And see, it wasn't that bad. You could have asked me that. Could have asked me to tell you that story earlier.
That's a top
Yeah,
10 moment on TSN now for sure.
Yeah,
that's
that play
that's
cemented
awesome.
you in history.
Oh well.
All right.
It's all good.
We really appreciate you coming on today and telling all the stories that you did. We had a blast chatting with you today. Maybe we'll talk to you again here soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you. See ya.
We'd like to thank our special guest, Jim Playfair, for coming on. Lots of great stories. And we'd like to thank Original Joe's for powering our future website coming soon. And we'd like to also say, anyone watching this, any owners of any small businesses or anything, if you want your ads in the podcast or on our social media posts, just contact us at our email, n.hockeyshack@gmail.com. And from all of us to you, stay squirrely.